There was once upon a time a thief who, upon being out of a job, was wandering by himself up and down the seashore. As he walked, he passed a man who was standing looking out at the waves. "I wonder," said the thief, addressing the stranger, "if you have ever seen a stone swimming." "Most certainly I have," said the other man, "and what is more, I saw the same stone jump out of the water and fly through the air." "This is capital," replied the thief. "You and I must go into partnership together. We shall certainly make our fortune. Let us start together at the palace of the king of the nearest kingdom. And when we get there, I will go into his presence alone and will tell him the most startling thing that I can invent." And here they parted company for a few hours, while the thief sought an interview with the king and begged his majesty to give him a glass of beer. "That is impossible," said the king, "as this year there has been such a failure of all the crops and all the hops and all the vines. We have neither wine nor beer in the entire kingdom." "How extraordinary!" answered the thief. "I have just come from a country where the crops were so fine that I saw 12 barrels of beer made out of one single branch of hops." "I bet you 300 florins that that is not true," answered the king. "And I bet you 300 florins that it is true," replied the thief. Then each staked the 300 florins, and the king said he would decide the question by sending a servant to the country to see if it was true. So the servant set out on horseback. On the way he met a man, and he asked him whence he came. And the man told him that he came from the self-same country to which the servant was at that moment bound. "If that be the case," asked the servant, "you can tell me, how high do the hops grow in your country, and how many barrels of beer can you get from one branch?" "Oh, I can't tell you that," answered the man, "but I happened to be present when the hops were being gathered in, and I saw that it took 3 men with axes 3 days to cut one single branch." Then the servant thought that he might save himself a long, arduous journey, so he gave the man 10 florins, and he told him he must repeat this news to the king. And when they got back to the palace, they came together into the king's presence. And the king asked, "Well, is it true about the hops?" "Yes, sire, it is," said the servant, "and here is a man I have brought with me from the country to confirm the tale." So the king paid the thief 300 florins, and the partners once more set off in search of adventure. As they journeyed, the thief said to his comrade, "I will now go into another country and tell another king something even more startling. And you must follow and back me up, and we will get away with more money. Just see if we don't." When they reached the next kingdom, the thief presented himself to the king, and he requested to give him a cauliflower. And the king answered, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry, but owing to a blight among the vegetables, we have no cauliflower." "Well, that is certainly strange," said the thief. "I have just come from a country where it grows so well that one head of cauliflower filled 12 water tubs." "Oh, I don't believe that," said the king. "I bet you 600 florins that it's true," replied the thief. "And I bet you 600 florins it is not true," answered the king. and he sent for a servant and ordered him to start out at once for the country where the thief had come from, to find out if the story of the cauliflower was true. And on his journey the servant met with a man. Stopping his horse, he asked him from whence he came. And the man replied that he came from the same country which the other man was traveling to. "If that be the case," said the servant, "you can tell me what size cauliflower grows in your country. Is it so large that one head fills 12 water tubs?" "Oh, I have not seen that," answered the man, "but I saw 12 wagons drawn by 12 horses carrying one head of cauliflower to the market." And the servant then answered, "Here are 10 florins for you, my man, for you have saved me a long journey. Come with me now and tell my king what you have told me." "All right," said the man, and they went together to the palace. And when the king asked the servant if he had found out the truth about the cauliflowers, the servant replied, "Sire, all that you heard was perfectly true. Here is a man from that very country. He will tell you." So the king had to pay the thief the 600 florins, and the two partners set out once more on their travels with their 900 florins. When they reached the country of the neighboring king, the thief entered the royal presence and began asking if his majesty knew that in an adjacent kingdom there was a town with a church steeple on which a bird had alighted, and the steeple was so high, and the bird's beak was so long, that he had pecked the stars until all of them fell out of the sky. "Now, I don't believe that," said the king. "Well, nevertheless, I am prepared to bet 1,200 florins that it is true," answered the thief. "And I will bet 1,200 florins that it is a lie," said the king. And he straightway sent a servant into the neighboring country to find the truth. By this time you'd think he would have found a different servant. As this somewhat lazy servant rode out, he met a man coming in the opposite direction. So he hailed him and asked him where he came from. And the man replied that he came out of the very town to which the servant happened to be bound. Then the servant asked if the story they had heard about the bird with the long beak was true. "Well, I don't know about that," answered the man, "as I've never seen the bird. But I once saw 12 men shoving with all their might and main to try to push a huge, monstrously sized egg into a cellar." "That is capital," answered the servant, presenting the man with 10 florins. "Come and tell your tale to the king, and you will have saved me another long journey." So when the story was repeated to the king, there was nothing for him to do but to pay the thief the 1,200 florins. Then the two partners set out again with their ill-gotten gains. They proceeded to divide it into 2 equal shares, but the thief kept back 3 of the florins that belonged to the liar's half of the booty. Shortly afterwards, each of them married, and they settled down in homes of their own with their wives. And one day the liar discovered that he had been cheated out of 3 florins by his partner. So he went to his house and he demanded them from him. "Oh, come next Saturday and I will give them to you," answered the thief. But as he had no intention of giving back the money, when Saturday morning came, he stretched himself out as stiff and stark upon the bed and told his wife to say that he was dead. So the wife rubbed her eyes with onions, and when the liar appeared at the door, she met him in tears, and she told him that her dear husband was dead, and he could not be paid the 3 florins. But the liar, who knew his partner's tricks, instantly suspected the truth and said, "As he has not paid me, I will pay him out with 3 good lashes from my riding whip." At these words the thief sprang to his feet, and appearing at the door, he promised his partner that if he would return the following Saturday, he would pay him. So the liar went away satisfied with this promise. But when Saturday morning came, the thief got up early and hid himself under the hay in the hayloft. When the liar appeared to demand his 3 florins, the wife again met him with tears in her eyes and told him that her husband was dead. "Where have you buried him?" asked the liar. "In the hayloft," answered the wife. "Then I will go there and pay respects to him, and I will take away some hay in payment of his debt," said the liar. And proceeding to the hayloft, he began to toss about the hay with the pitchfork, prodding into the trusses of hay till, in terror of his life, the thief crept out and promised his partner to pay him 3 florins on the following Saturday. When the day came, he got up at sunrise, and going down into the crypt at a neighboring chapel, he stretched himself out quite still and stiff in an old stone coffin. Very soon bethought of the crypt and set out for the chapel, confident that he would shortly discover the hiding place of his old friend. He had just entered the crypt, and his eyes were adjusting to the darkness when he heard the sound of whispering at the grated windows. Listening intently, he overheard the plotting of a band of robbers who had brought their treasure to the crypt, meaning to hide it there while they set out on fresh adventures. All the time they were speaking, they were removing the bars from the windows, and in another minute they would have entered the crypt and discovered the hiding place of the liar. As soon as the robbers entered the crypt, they set about the work of dividing their treasure. Now there were 12 robbers, but by mistake the chief of the band divided it into 13 heaps. When he saw his mistake, he said they had not time to count it all over again, but that the 13th heap should belong to whoever among them could strike off the head of the old stone statue in the niche with just a single stroke. With these words he picked up his axe, and he approached the niche where the liar was standing. But just as he had waved the axe over his head, ready to strike, a voice was heard from the stone coffin. "Clear out of this, or the dead will arise from their coffin, and the statue will descend from the wall, and you will be driven out more dead than alive." And with a bound, the thief jumped out of the coffin, the liar jumped down from his niche, and the robbers were so terrified that they ran helter-skelter out of the crypt, leaving all their gold behind them, vowing that they would never put their foot inside that haunted place again. So the partners divided the gold between them and carried it back to their homes, and history does not tell us any more about them.